Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Motion Podcast, an educational and inspirational program that focuses on helping professionals communicate better, invest wisely, and excel in their careers with an emphasis on self-care. Each week, I enjoy uplifting and sometimes hilarious conversations with leading experts who span the globe. If you're as passionate about personal growth and changing the world for the better as I am, lean in, lean back, and join the journey. Today, we continue with part 2 of my eye-opening interview with Mandy Bowsmith. Mandy is an experienced HR professional with over 2 decades in human resources. She now helps government agencies enhance their HR practices through creativity, innovation, and technology, focusing on developing their most valuable asset, people. Listen, every entrepreneur and small business owner knows HR is not limited to Fortune 500-ish corporate America. Working with a team requires leadership and legal acumen. If you want to ensure you're doing it right, listen to both parts of this informative conversation.
One of the things recently I heard when President Biden decided he wasn't going to run for re-election, they had a Maryland congressman on one of the talk shows, and he said, you know, the great thing about Joe Biden is he's a leader. But not only is he a leader, he's a good leader, and he makes room for other leaders. And I thought, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
there's that old quote that, great leaders make other great leaders, not great followers. And that's
exactly
what so many people's goals seem to be. My team is so dedicated to me. My girls this, my people that.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely. And if they leave to go do something great, then be happy about that.
Yes.
They're not disloyal. You did what a leader should have set out to do. Yeah.
Right.
Look what you've done. You've launched another professional.
Right.
What are you mad about? Yeah.
Not only that, but I think it starts earlier. So I've been playing around with the idea, and I'm hoping to put together some courses on this. But I think one of our great failings in not only in human resources but in leadership is that only certain people have access to leadership training. You notice that in organizations?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Right? It's only certain people. And I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and it occurred to me, I was thinking about my high school experience. Only certain people, like the student council folks, had access to leadership training in high school.
True.
Why? Right? So I'm thinking because my oldest son is going into high school this school year. And so this is kind of top of mind to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, why do we reserve leadership training just for a select few when it could benefit at every step in an organization? If we have mandatory training we all have to go through, right? We have drug and alcohol awareness. We have sexual harassment prevention. We have policies. We have all this stuff. Why is leadership skills or basic leadership skills, basic communication skills, conflict resolution not a part of that mandatory training curriculum?
Because if it's offered, it's optional along with a big slate of 900 courses and you're not even given time to access it. It's like, oh, look at all this great stuff we have, but do it on your own time.
Yeah, do it on your own time. And we're not going to pay for you to go somewhere else.
Exactly.
Right. So in my world, I want to develop accessible leadership training for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Then what you're doing is you're equalizing the playing field.
Yes.
Right? There are going to be some people who, people, Dr. Mo, I'm sure in your life, who are natural born leaders.
Mm-hmm.
They just have that charisma. They've got that, whatever that is, that je ne sais quoi, whatever that is. Sure, there are those people. But then there are other people who, they don't know that they're leaders. But if they were given some tools, they might emerge as leaders in other ways.
Exactly.
Leading small teams, leading projects. And if everybody's given the same references, the same playbook, especially in leadership, maybe there would be a little less friction between teams and leaders because they're understanding what the leader's saying. How many times have you had a leader go to training and come back and he's like, I'm going to use these new fancy words I used and this new fancy method for doing whatever. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? We don't know what you're talking about.
That was me as a young leader. When I went into practice in my 20s, every conference workshop I went to, I came back and my staff would be like, oh my God, what?
I know.
What now?
You were fired up and they were like, oh hell, here we go. Yeah. But it's because we don't we're not inclusive of giving people those tools.
Yeah.
And it's not accessible. In my career, professional development opportunities were few and far between unless I paid for them myself. And part of that is because in government, the first thing that goes is training dollars when you got to cut budgets.
Yeah. Not just in government, corporate too. Yeah.
So it really, to me, it's about equalizing the playing field, bringing leadership to everybody. But not only that, bringing humanity first, authenticity and humanity first.
Absolutely.
That's my message.
Absolutely. And thank you also for reinforcing the theme of this podcast, which I do weekly for free for 10 years now, because that is my goal, to give people leadership training, communication skills. It's an ongoing masterclass, and I learn while I share with others. But in the absence of companies investing in your personal and professional growth, the onus is on you to make it happen. And there are not just this podcast, but so many free resources out there now that we didn't have when I was young. I read a lot of books. A lot of my stuff came from books, but you can go on LinkedIn and take free courses. You can go on YouTube. I mean, you can download. Everybody, including you, which we're going to talk about later, has resources on their website. So don't just sit there and mad at your company that they won't invest in you. I want to know, are you investing in you?
Yeah.
And maybe you'll come to work with some new terminology, have some new ideas in the meeting. And that's another way to get noticed, is that you develop individually and then you come in and share and give back. And please use those skills for your family too. You know, I'm a big family person, and we can be so great at work with communication and conflict resolution and get home and be an asshole. So
it's true.
Those are translatable skills, folks. So it is true.
In every aspect of your life. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Oh, wow. You got me fired up here and all off of what I was going to talk about. So let's turn this thing around and get back to, although you've answered the questions, like one of my questions was top communication skills leaders must develop. You've answered that just with some wonderful anecdotes and stories and experience. So now I want to go back to, though, and make sure that the listeners understand what is micro coaching and how it cultivates potential in leaders.
Micro coaching is something I developed. I have a client who's in a high level executive position, extremely stressful, a lot of responsibility. And she was finding it difficult to go into meetings where she was addressing wider leadership and getting them to understand what she's a finance person. So getting them to understand the numbers, the budget, how these things work. And it's not because she doesn't have the knowledge, skills, and ability. She's an exceedingly smart woman, very articulate. It was one of those things. You get in front of a crowd and you're like, right?
Right.
And so we had coached through these things in a number of sessions. And then I knew that the meeting was coming up. So I scheduled a call with her about an hour before the big meeting. And I called her, and it was 15 minutes. There were no pleasantries. It was, what is your message? What is it you want your audience to take away from what you're telling them? How are you going to know if they have taken away what you want them to take away? And how are you going to follow up with them so that they understand that this is an ongoing process. It's a dynamic situation that is going to have to, everybody's going to have to keep an eye on it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to know if it hits? And it was targeted, right? It was very specific to what she was doing. And the goal was to put her in the mindset, right? We had coached through it. She knew it backwards and forwards. She knew exactly what she needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was putting her in the mindset right before she went into that meeting. And she called me that afternoon and said, it worked. It worked. It was excellent. They understood what was happening. And to boot, her mentor of many years text messaged her and said, you did a fantastic job.
Oh, and there's that affirmation and appreciation. Right? Beautiful.
And so how I want to bring this to your audience, Dr. Mo, is to say that we can coach ourselves. We can put ourselves in a mindset of self micro coaching. Mm-hmm. When we have a big meeting, or maybe we have an interview, maybe we have, we have to deliver something in front of a board or a city council. In my case, a city council. Mm-hmm. You're nervous and you know your stuff, right? If you're an expert in your field, you know your stuff. There's a reason you're in the job you're in, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to trust that you know. And before you go into that meeting, you want to put yourself, close the door in your office, take 10 minutes, take 15 minutes, and go through a series of questions. And those questions are, what is my message today? How am I going to make sure that the message I want to get across is getting across to my audience? How am I going to make sure that my audience understands that message, right? Because they can get the message doesn't mean they understand the message. And how am I going to make sure that any follow-up is going to be absolutely taken care of with my team or with myself or with the people I'm addressing? And it's a simple, quick thing. You ask yourself these questions. You answer yourself. I mean, it sounds a little weird. You're talking to yourself in the office, but you're by yourself, so you're all right. But you put yourself in the mindset, I know what I'm talking about. This is the message I want to deliver. This is how I'm going to know if they're picking up what I'm putting down. And this is how I'm going to know if they understand it. And then this is what the follow-up is.
That's
and you
great.
do that before you go into that meeting. You're in the mindset. You're putting your game face on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you watch the Olympics, but I'm a huge Olympics fan.
Oh, I'm loving it. Noah Lyles, Sha'Carri,
oh man,
everybody.
Look at
it's
that, man. It's
phenomenal.
But think about Sha'Carri Richardson, right? Mm-hmm. You can see her talking to herself before the race. She's not looking at anybody. She is in her zone, and she's doing a form of micro coaching. She's going through her race. She's telling herself, remember this. You got this. You got this. That's what she's doing. So this is the same kind of thing for us non-athletic business folks to put ourselves in. We're putting our game faces on.
Yeah, I like that. And I realize now that it's something that I use for myself. I didn't know the term of it, but I'm a speaker. I speak at huge conferences, and I remember before my TEDx talk, even though I've been speaking professionally for 30 years, it was the biggest stage of my life. And I was so nervous, and all these people were coming at me trying to be encouraging, but I was just trying to focus. And I just got in a corner. I was like, just give me a second. I just got in a corner. So if you can't get away, like you said, with Sha'Carri, with me, I spoke in Denver. I was sitting in a row with all the VIPs of this organization, but I just shut myself off to go through in my head. I have something useful and important to say. I'm here for a reason. I'm prepared. I can do this. And it really just, built my confidence up so much just to take those moments to do that. So I totally endorse what you're doing. And I know I like it even more when it comes from someone else, honestly, because I like
Right.
hyping myself up, but to hear that other person going, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and, how are we going to execute it to make sure I remember? And
Right.
yeah, that is so, so important, guys. If you don't take anything else away from this, remember this micro coaching process, and Mandy's giving you some excellent questions that would fit almost every scenario I can think of. So thanks for sharing that.
Another tip, just to add on to that, is maybe you have somebody in your life that you always listen to, right? Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your parent, maybe it's your best friend, maybe it's a mentor. It might be even more valuable if you ask them to record those questions for you. So that when you're putting yourself in that mindset, you're playing those questions, right? Like a voice memo or something, and you're answering those questions, but it's coming from that person that you always listen to. That person knows that you've got it, right? That's another just little tweak tip there to, because it's a brain game. Right? Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to our final question. And we've gone over a little bit, but I am just enjoying this so much. You are just a wealth of information. And I promised you, listeners, actionable strategies. And if you can't take something away from this conversation, then keep working remote and not being around people. That's all I can say. This right here is for leveling up in dealing with other people, which leads to the inevitable conflict. So let's end this masterclass talking conflict resolution. Conflict cannot be avoided, and the people who try to are making a grave mistake. It is part of life. We are different. We see things different. We have different perspective. We don't know what we don't know. It can't be avoided. Can't be avoided, but it can be navigated. Mandy, what are some effective strategies for conflict resolution in the workplace or wherever we encounter it?
Yeah. One of the things I think that people think, it's one of those misnomers, right? It's one of those myths about conflict. They think that it has to be horrible to face conflict or to confront somebody about something that's occurring. And I don't mean confront has a negative connotation in our society, right? And I don't mean that. I mean, if you're having, let's say you're having interpersonal conflict with somebody at work, right? Maybe you have a personality clash. Maybe you don't agree with the way they did something on a project. Instead of sitting there stewing about it or bitching to your other coworkers about how horrible Sally is, because we all do that, right? Ask Sally to coffee, or ask Sally, "Hey, do you have a couple of minutes? Can I talk to you about something?" And be vulnerable, be human, and say, you did this thing on the project, and I didn't agree with it, and I'll admit I felt some kind of way, but can we talk about it? Because I don't understand why you did what you did. So can you tell me? Right? So my first recommendation is you have got to be vulnerable and approach the person. You have to approach the situation.
Right.
But you have to approach it not with I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to tell you why I'm right and you're wrong, but with I'm seeking to understand, because we all had the same information. I wanted to react this way. You reacted this way. I'd really like to know why. So active inquiry, right? As coaches, we're taught active inquiry, asking questions that will really give you answers. And this is the most important, active listening. Do not listen just waiting for your turn to reply, to tell them why they're wrong, right? You have to listen, and you have to really be open to, well, maybe they did make a good decision and I just didn't see it. Or, hey, I still don't agree, but here's why I don't agree. Can we talk about it? Because you're still going to have to work with Sally in the future. So, you want to know what's happening. So the tips are, you've got to be communicative. You've got to be vulnerable in approaching the conflict. You've got to ask questions really seeking to understand what's going on. And then you've got to listen. You've got to be an active listener and try to understand what they're telling you. Now, that doesn't always work. Let's just put it out there. It's not always easy to resolve conflict just one-on-one. If you can't seem to resolve whatever that conflict is, please employ the use of a mediator. Employ the use of a third party, doesn't have a dog in the fight, who can help both sides see maybe where they could give a little. Because really, everything in our lives, and I think if people stop and think about it, everything in our life is some kind of compromise, right? We as humans, in our marriages, in our relationships with our kids, in our work life, in our, friendship life, there's compromise. We're always giving and taking and pulling and pushing. The same is true at work, but we seem to have this idea that it's a black and white, situation when we're at work. It's not. It's a human environment, and we have to approach it humanly.
And the culture right now is reinforcing that as well. If you don't agree with me, there's something wrong with you. I don't want anything to do with you. You're a horrible person. I mean, we see the things we see in Congress now. I am just appalled during a State of the Union that people are yelling and throwing things at the president of the United States. I'm like, if the bar could be set any lower by a group that everyone used to look up to, I don't think it's possible. It is just appalling. But, that's just one source of role model and mentoring for the country. We can do it on an individual level by treating people with respect like we want to be treated. And I say this as someone who used to be that cold shoulder. I'm cutting you off. I'm putting this wall up person because we don't agree or you said something mean to me. And living with the aftermath of that, this person you work with that you're trying to avoid, you don't want to talk to, even though you have to, that is so much worse than having one or two difficult conversations and resolving it, or at least reaching a level where we agree to disagree. This is why, but I understand you better and you understand me better. Just that's how it gets to be toxic. It's just going around the subject and not dealing with it.
Yeah. And if nothing else, think about the energy you expend being pissed off at somebody. Yeah. Right. And how much that consumes your day.
Yeah. And hurts you physically.
It does. Yeah. And if you just talk to them and try to get some sort of resolution, even if you still don't love each other, that's all right. I've worked with a lot of people I don't love.
Exactly.
But you at least have an understanding of who each other is. And you know how to approach each other. Yeah. And you're not spending all that energy in just feeling some kind of way. You're not.
Every time you see them, every time you hear their voice, an email comes from them. That is no way to live. That is horrible. And I thank goodness that I've grown as a person, and I share my stories. I could talk about success and stuff I'm proud of all day, but I share my stories so that people know I relate, I understand, as do you. We've got to, I hate it, but we've got to sign off. Before we go, dear Mandy Bowsmith, amazing guest, how can listeners find you online and learn more about your resources or services that you offer?
Absolutely. So you can find me at bluenoteresources.com. That's the website for my firm. I also have a presence on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and I'm trying to learn Twitter or X or whatever the heck it's called.
TikTok. That's where you need to be. I'm telling you as a new friend, you need to be on TikTok because you're
TikTok.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll look at TikTok. All right. So I'm learning social media platforms, but LinkedIn, you can find me. You can find me on Facebook, and you can certainly find me at my website.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Mandy. And
thank you, Dr. Mo.
Listeners. Oh, my pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for your time and support of this woman-owned indie podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share for more like this. Until next time, be safe and be well. And wasn't that a great program? Oh, love that episode. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's MOE. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about my services that I offer, and book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to talk with your group, and I'd love to work with you. So until the next time, review, renew, and re-you. Thank you.